You'll ruin everything just by being there. That's what my mother said when she found out I was getting married. Yes, my wedding. I ran away the day before the ceremony. I erased everything. They wrote to me a year later when they found out I was happy without them. Those words still echo in my head. Not every day, no. But sometimes when I open the closet and come across that blue box with the invitation to a wedding that never happened. That's when I hear her voice, cold, calm, confident. You'll ruin everything just by being there. I was never the daughter anyone was proud of. Average grades, no special talents, not a single diploma to hang in the living room to impress the guests. Ordinary, but I never thought being ordinary was a crime. At least not until I announced I was getting married. It all started so uneventfully. I met Alexei 3 years ago at a mutual friend's birthday. He was quiet with a barely noticeable smile that only appeared in the corners of his lips when he was truly happy. No love at first sight, no fireworks, just two people who found peace in each other. After a year of living together in a tiny rented apartment with peeling paint on the windowsills and a creaky hallway floor, he proposed. No restaurant, no ring in a champagne glass. We were lying on our old couch watching some movie, and he simply turned to me and asked, "Will you marry me?" I said yes, as easily as breathing. I dreamed of a small ceremony, no lavish dresses or hundreds of guests. Just the closest people, just genuine smiles. White flowers, soft music, and his hand in mine. That was all I needed to be happy. My mother found out about the wedding from my aunt. I had the misfortune to tell her. She called me that same evening. Her voice was deceptively sweet as she asked about the date, the venue, the dress. And then, as if in passing, she said, "I wonder how long he'll last with you. A month? A year? You know what you're like. You'll ruin everything just by being there." I said nothing. I always said nothing when she spoke like that. 27 years of silence. Mother always knew how to press on the sore spots. "Remember how you broke Grandma's crystal vase? So clumsy. You look even fatter in that dress. Can't you at least do something decent with your hair?" Little needles she had been sticking into my self-esteem since childhood. Alexei didn't know anything about my relationship with her. I always brushed it off with vague phrases. "She's complicated. That's just how she is." I even chose my wedding dress, thinking about what she would say, not what I wanted. 2 weeks before the wedding, my mother came to help with the preparations. In reality, she came to make sure I wouldn't embarrass her. "You're seriously going to serve this to the guests? He comes from such a respectable family, and well, you know. God, couldn't you at least find a dress that hides your flaws a little?" Alexei noticed how I changed around her. How I started stuttering, lowered my eyes, became a shadow of myself. He asked what was going on, but I just waved it off. Just wedding stress. The day before the ceremony, the 3 of us were sitting in the kitchen. My mother was talking about how I'd need to watch my weight after the wedding, or my husband would quickly find a replacement. Alexei suddenly stood up and said, "Excuse me, but I won't let you talk to my future wife like that." It was the first time anyone had stood up for me in front of her. My mother smiled her signature smile, the one that never reached her eyes. "You just don't know her like I do. She's always been like this, ruining everything just by being there." I remember the silence that followed those words. I remember the dripping water from the tap, drip, drip, drip. I remember Alexei starting to say something, but I wasn't listening anymore. Something broke inside me completely in that moment. Or maybe something finally came together. I got up from the table and left the room, quietly, calmly, as if I were going to the bathroom. But in truth, I went to the bedroom, took out the suitcase I had packed in advance. I always kept my things ready, a childhood habit, and left the apartment. No explanations, no goodbyes. I don't remember how I got to the train station. I only remember buying a ticket for the first train. St. Petersburg, a city where I knew no one. Perfect. On the train, I turned off my phone and dropped the SIM card into a glass of water. Childish, but I needed a physical act to symbolize the break. I watched the card slowly sink and felt a strange relief. The first weeks in Petersburg were like a fog. I rented a small room on the city's outskirts, found a temporary job as a waitress. I tried not to think about what was happening back home, whether Alexei had waited for me at the altar, what my mother told the guests. At night, I was tormented by nightmares. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, heart pounding. I dreamed I was standing in a wedding dress in an empty church, my mother's voice echoing through the hall. "You'll ruin everything just by being there." But days passed, and slowly I began to notice other things, like the smell of fresh bread from the bakery across the street, the way light filtered through the trees in the park where I walked in the mornings, the pleasure of drinking coffee without fearing criticism. I developed new habits. Every morning, I opened the window wide and listened to the creak of the old window frame. Strangely enough, that sound gave me a sense of home. I learned to eat breakfast slowly, my favorite avocado toast and mint tea. No one commented on the calories, no one reminded me that someone with your figure should be careful with carbs. After a couple of months, I found a permanent job at a small bookstore. The owner, an elderly woman with silver hair and kind eyes, hired me without too many questions. I loved arranging books on shelves, inhaling their scent, talking to customers about literature. Eventually, I made acquaintances, then friends, people who knew only the real me without the weight of my past. I started taking photography classes, something I'd always wanted but never dared. Turns out I had an eye for detail, for the play of light and shadow. My first day off spent completely alone was a revelation. No one controlled what I ate when I went to bed, what movies I watched. No one commented on my appearance, my decisions, my mistakes. I could simply be. I noticed how I was changing. I stood straighter. I stopped constantly apologizing for taking up space. I learned to look people in the eye when speaking to them. I started saying no when I didn't like something, and yes when I did. One evening, as I was walking home from work, it started to pour. In the past, I would have panicked, looked for shelter, worried about how I looked. But that day, I just laughed, turned my face to the sky, and let the rain wash away the last remnants of fear. I stood in the rain, soaked to the bone, and felt alive, truly alive, maybe for the first time in 27 years. 6 months passed. I moved into a bigger apartment and got a cat, an orange, bold one with a mind of his own. I named him Marcel for no special reason, just because I liked the sound of it. Marcel slept on my pillow, stole food from the table, and refused to follow any rules. We got along perfectly. I rarely thought about my past life. Sometimes I'd wonder about Alexei, how he was, what he was doing. But those thoughts no longer hurt. I hoped he was happy, that he'd found someone who wouldn't run from her own wedding. I tried not to think of my mother at all. That wound was healing slower. A year after I ran away, on an ordinary Tuesday, I checked my email and saw a message from Alexei. Hi, I hope you're doing well. Your mother is dying of cancer. She wants to see you. Please respond. I stared at those lines for an hour, not knowing what I felt, not knowing what I should feel. That evening, I went to the embankment. I stood, looking at the dark water of the Neva, at the city lights reflected in it. I thought of my mother, the woman who never hugged me without a reason, who taught me to doubt every step I took, who made it her duty to remind me of my flaws, real and imagined. And suddenly I realized I didn't hate her. I wasn't angry. I just didn't feel anything anymore. She had become a distant memory, a story from another life. I was no longer the girl desperately seeking her approval. I took out my phone and wrote to Alexei, "I'm sorry she's sick, but I won't come. I'm sorry. I hope you're well." The next day he replied, "I understand. I'm doing well. I got married last year. She's not sick. She just wanted to know where you are. She doesn't believe you can be happy without her. I'm sorry for the lie. Take care." I read that message while sitting on my balcony with a cup of morning coffee. Marcel lay beside me, exposing his orange belly to the sun. The sounds of the city drifted up, car horns, people talking, music from open windows. I didn't cry when I read the message. I just smiled, because I knew I had done the right thing. Here in my new life, I was no longer the one who ruins everything just by being there. I was simply myself, with all my flaws, quirks, and the quiet happiness I had learned to treasure. There are different kinds of courage: the courage to stay and fight, and the courage to leave and start over. I chose the latter. And you know what? Sometimes the bravest thing is simply to breathe deeply, no matter what. To wake up every morning and choose yourself. Again and again, day after day, every time I open my window and hear the creak of the old frame, I smile. That's the sound of my freedom, my quiet happiness, my life finally lived by my own rules. And yes, sometimes I still open that blue box with the wedding invitation that never was. But now I look at it without regret, as a reminder that sometimes you have to lose something important to find something priceless: yourself.